Two Marys, Miriam and Mary. Miriam from the first reading. Now Miriam, the name, is the same name as Mary. Mary was probably called Miriam, but for clarity today, Miriam is Moses' sister, and Mary is the mother of Jesus. Miriam sang out the joy of all the Hebrews escaping from generations of Egyptian slavery. God had parted the Red Sea for them until they were safely ashore on the other side. But when Pharaoh and the Egyptians raced after them along that same God-improvised corridor, well, you've seen the movie, the waves rushed back over the same road, killing Pharaoh and his army, and the Israelites were saved and could go on to the promised land. And Miriam sang her song then, a joyful song for sure, one of hope, and yes, hope for the future. There were some bad days on the road to the promised land, days of doubt, uneasiness, hunger, days when it just didn't seem like the right thing to do, days of fear, and yet they kept going. When they were hungry, they were fed with manna from heaven. And then we have this Miriam, Mary over here, she's leading the men of the New Testament. Mary told she will be the mother of the Messiah, or as some would say, the mother of God, and she said yes. And she sang about, well, what we just sang, about social justice. God has shown strength with his arm. God has scattered the proud in the imagination of their hearts. God has put down the mighty from their seat and has exalted the humble and the meek. God has filled the hungry with good things, and the rich God has sent away empty. Well, my name is Mary, and I've been singing ever since I can remember. My mother probably sang when she was pregnant, carrying me. My father was a bass baritone. He was always a ham. You didn't even have to drop a hat, he'd sing. And I took right after my parents. When I was 6, Walt Disney's Sleeping Beauty finally made it to our small New Jersey town, and there must have been a special deal at Soroka's record store because my father brought home a recording of the Tchaikovsky music for the Sleeping Beauty ballet. I danced around the house to it, but I also took my Easter basket. I always saved it, thinking the Easter bunny might show up any time. And we had a big yard, and I'd pretend to be Aurora in the woods, going about our trees and bushes and picking berries, never eating them, and singing la 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 la. I've always sung. Well, not always. There came a time when I stopped cold. But as a kid, I sang. I sang everywhere, in the house, in the yard, in the woods. I sang in the junior choir at church. I sang in the adult choir at church. I sang solos in the choir. I sang duets with my dad. I sang in school choirs. I sang solos in the choirs. I sang in college shows. I sang in summer theaters, Brigadoon, Cabaret, Stop the World. When I came to New York, I sang in operas downtown, Mimi and La Boheme, Norina and Don Pasquale, and Calpurnia in something called Rinse the Blood Off My Toga. And I was a priestess in some opera at Symphony Space. I don't remember the name. I was also singing in a madrigal group at Renaissance fairs, choirs at Carnegie Hall. I sang walking down the street. I sang in offices where I worked while going to the copy machine. And then one day I stopped. You know how it is, you think things are fine, and then something happens, something that stops you in your tracks and fills you with doubt, something that could break your heart and shut you up, a kind of enslavement, a kind of doing God's will, but not sure it's going to work. Where's that manna? Something scary, Mary saying, no deal. My mother, who smoked for years as a way to stay thin, told me she'd been diagnosed with lung cancer, and doctors removed a part of one of her lungs. She had to stop golfing, which was her passion. She grew weaker until she could barely walk up 4 steps without stopping, even with help. My parents sold the beautiful home they had worked for and moved into an apartment. And my mother had to live attached to a tank of oxygen for the rest of her life. I remember walking down a street somewhere in Manhattan. A woman came toward me, puffing away at a cigarette. She asked, "Which way is Fifth Avenue?" All I saw was the cigarette. "What do you care?" I asked her. "You're smoking. You don't care to live, much less care what street you're on." Well, she turned on and asked the next person up the sidewalk. I was a case. My living situation had changed too. My pal Sandy, with whom I shared half a house in Woodside, Queens, she was leaving to be with her boyfriend, and she paid her share of our rent before she left, but the landlord said she didn't. Well, I couldn't afford the whole rent or litigation, so I needed to move. A friend of a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend had a friend who needed a roommate in Woodside, Queens. I took it, barely sight unseen. I should have seemed a little harder. This roommate, her name was Kathy, brought home a different man every night, one she'd picked up in a bar. And while no one would call me Miss Good Housekeeping, she beat me several times over. I'll only tell you that when I moved in and I opened the refrigerator for the snacks she had left for me, there were roaches in the refrigerator. I don't know how that works. I also heard water running, and I'll tell you that story at coffee hour if you're interested. Now, I'd been going to vocal competitions for a few years. I didn't go to win, but to get feedback from the judges, and they were always helpful and encouraging. And then came Baltimore. I sang. I went to the judges, and they said, "Why are you here? You're not a singer." I said, "I've sung solos, I've sung in operas." They said, "People have been fooling you. Your voice is unpleasant. It is hard to listen to. You're not a singer." But that felt right. And I thought, well, I won't hurt people's ears anymore. I stopped singing. I didn't sing on the street, at home, or in the office walking to the copy machine. I wanted to sing, but I didn't dare. After all, I couldn't. And people noticed. I'd been working at a medical journal, and that was where people realized I'd stopped singing. They said they missed it. I didn't believe it. The desert of losing our breath, my mother was losing hers, I mine. I wanted to sing, yet I dared not open my mouth. The desert of the soul, when you find yourself in a strange place, where nothing is as it was, where you are a stranger to yourself, when your mother is dying, when the place where you were born is dying. So this Mary stopped singing. Well, something happened. My friend Terry called me up and said, "Bruce and I are moving to New Jersey. Would you like our apartment?" That they'd spoken to the landlord. He wouldn't change the lease. And it's $350 a month. You want it? 23rd and 7th Avenue, $350 a month. Well, those days are over, but so I moved to 7th and 216 7th Avenue is the address, by the way. I know it sounds unbelievable. I'd taken a job at that medical journal as assistant managing editor. The journal, Emergency Medicine, is gone now, but it was healthy. I put out 2 big issues each month. One day, one of the contributing writers came in to hand in a story and pick up another assignment. She was a good writer, usually wrote the cover stories and won some awards. She stopped in to see the managing editor and me. We shared this big open space with windows. And I'd just taken that job, and the managing editor introduced Hilda Regier to me, saying that I just moved into her neighborhood. Now, Hilda would and probably will tell people, invite people to church. Ask them to come, and you'd think that knowing I'd moved to Chelsea, she would do just that. But she didn't do just that. I don't know how she knew or how she guessed. I don't know. She said, "Would you like to join a church choir?" And "Oh, yes," said that little hush singing voice in me. Well, it was just a little church choir. I could sit in the back row and sing quietly, and no one would be offended. I'd meet people. So I said, yes. So that night I got a call from the lovely Thad McGarr. He gave me all the information, time and address, his place for choir practice. So on that Thursday, I left my apartment on 7th and 23rd and turned the corner on what I would call Chelsea Community Church Street to the house with the colorful glass atop the door, rang the bell, and a voice called, "It's open." And I went in, the door in the inner hall opened, and for the first time I saw Thad McGarr's smiling face. "Sopranos over there," he pointed. I went into the parlor and saw that empty chair back there in the corner, last row, just right. Another woman sat next to me and introduced herself as Marilyn. I wasn't sure who I was. The music director was Tom Damrosch, a name on plaques. Damrosch is a name on plaques on the walls of Carnegie Hall, his family. He was tall, handsome. I wanted to marry him. No such luck. He was married. As we sang, I sang as softly as possible, and Marilyn sang very softly, and singing softer than she did was tough. I felt a jolt of freedom, though, because I was singing again. We took a break. Thad put refreshments in the second parlor. As we got up, Marilyn said to me, "Your voice is lovely." And the woman in front of me, Faith Florer, said, "You have a beautiful voice." Were they deaf? By the piano, I heard Tom say to Thad, "She's a good one." My voice had come back. How had that happened? Well, of course, my voice had always been there, tapping at my door and saying, "Let me back in." And as I met for the first time the people of Chelsea Community Church, I knew the door opened that I could sing again. My mother died that July. She had almost no voice left, just a whisper. And she shocked the priest who came to visit, who asked her, "Why are you angry at God?" Which must be what he asked everybody. My mother struggled up on her elbows and said, "God is getting me through this." And so God does. Even in days of fear, even when Pharaoh comes after you, even when you stop working through stuff, it can be too much. But the stuff of who you are remains. It never goes away. There will come some angel with news that it's possible to defeat the enemy who taunts you and to celebrate victory from the slavery of doubt and the strange voices of people who set themselves up as authorities and are not. Let them drown. It works with churches too, I think, through our heart and lungs and all the emotions we have and breathe in, and all of us, the triumph over the desert of the soul, the triumph over what others may think, the fear that our dreams will never work. But there is knowledge of the heart that beats in us, in our rhythm, through our lives, so that during those songless days, someone, somehow, someone will ask you, "Would you like to join a church choir?" And you will say with both fear and longing, as other Marys have done, "Yes."